Hi and welcome back to JJ's Productions. We've got game 4 of our season. It'll be Stoke City versus Wigan we're previewing. With me as always is Jan. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks Josh.
So what did you think about the Preston game this week?
I saw an improvement to come from 2 behind, and catch up twice. I think that was very good. If that had happened last week, well, it just wouldn't have happened.
I'd say that with the Leeds one as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had it in our locker in the first 2 games to come from behind, so
No.
I think it's a small improvement. I know you look on social media yourself, but I'm always on Twitter and I've seen a lot of hot takes, and I think there's still a reaction of this is a poor performance and we need to improve, the players aren't good enough. But on paper, I do think it was an improvement.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean, in the match itself, I think there were like 10 minutes that Stoke were at the best, and then the next 10 minutes the worst.
Yeah.
I think this is how it went on during the match. But they've got to make it so that they're good for 45 minutes and good the second half 45 minutes. Instead of having these bits and drabs where they could do something.
Well, I'll admit this is where I have been talking about transfers a lot in the first 3 episodes of this series, and I stand by my point that I think we have been all over the place with the transfer policy. But on the other hand, this game sort of brought to light it just made me realise that we've got a lot of new players and we do need to give them some time to gel, because you've got a group who have just come in like Tommins, McLean, who have had very little pre-season or have had a pre-season with a different club and having to adapt to a different way of playing. And then you've got a group of players who have been here the entire pre-season but were also here for the relegation last year. And just getting all of these players to gel and form some form of style of play, I actually think this is where we're struggling at the moment. Liam Rossinier in the coverage yesterday on Sky, he was saying we don't have a style of play, and I 100% agree there. That I think it's only when Crouch came on we actually looked a bit more like we had focus, we knew how to play to his strengths.
Well, I'm glad you've said that, because I can't remember Preston's manager's name and I don't want to remember it, to be honest. Before the match, he was giving it all this and all that, and after the match, the interviewer said, do you think the game changed when Crouch come on? He says, no, he says, how can one man make a difference, sort of thing. Well, yes, he could. Crouch did make a difference. It's as if they lifted their heads up again and took charge of the game.
Yeah, I think we played better in the second half, even though we didn't, like you said, it was in dribs and drabs, but I think we had better spells after Crouch came on than before. And I feel sorry for Berahino in that sense, because I don't think he had a bad game.
No, he didn't.
But I don't know if other people will disagree with my view here, but I actually think he was played out of position in that he was asked to sort of fill in midfield at times when we were off the ball. And it's just not his strength in play. You look at Bojan, who would probably fit that role better, and I heard Gary Rowett say before the match he thought that Berahino would offer something different in that type of role. But I'm not exactly sure what he was looking for. I mean, why not just play him in a straight 4-4-2 rather than having a striker dropping into midfield?
Yeah, I can't understand the logic in it. I really can't, because as you say, that would have been a better lineup than what he put out.
The thing is as well, what I found is that when Berahino was actually dropping into the midfield, it meant that Afobe was isolated again up front. And not only that, Afobe couldn't press the entire back line, so when Berahino was a little higher, he was able to keep joining the press and try and get them working harder on the ball. Whereas when he was sitting in the midfield, he was basically filling a gap. And it is the problem with 4-4-2 in general. You're playing a 2 against a 3, and I can understand why you'd ask a striker to drop deep. But on the other hand, I think maybe it's a case of, instead of trying to fill the gap, be proactive and win the ball back from the front line.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh. He's got to do something, because things aren't right as they are, and we're just going to get frustrated. All the fans are going to get frustrated at this. But can I just put a point across? Our Jack.
Yeah.
I think he played really, really good yesterday. And I think now that everything's been sorted out and he knows he's staying, he's not going anywhere, it's as if he's put all his,
he's put all his problems behind him.
Yeah, that's it, sorry.
Yeah. Because I think even though he would deny that he was trying to he was trying to force a move, which I don't think he actually was trying to force a move, but I think he was open to it. And I think it might have played on his mind, he was thinking, like saying that first game at Leeds, a little bit of him might have thought, is this my last game for the club? And it's not that he would actively think on it, but it might just be something that plays at the back of his mind, and he's worried about having a bad last game, and I think now that the window's shut, I think he's settled down again, and we've just got to hope that we can keep him in January, because a new contract would probably settle him down there. But you just worry about the idea that when January comes around, this whole thing pops up again. It'd be just good if we can settle him down for a season now, so that we don't have to worry about this when the window opens again.
Yeah, but I was really pleased with him, and it made me day really, because he did make a few saves, which against Leeds I couldn't have seen him do it.
I mean, I've got a question for you, because there's a saying in there about goalkeepers that they can save you 10 points a season if you get a good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
What I would ask is, in the Preston game, he made a few saves to keep the score down. Now, would you argue that he just did his job, in the sense that a few people have said at half-time Preston could have been 3 or 4 up?
Yeah.
Is that the case that Jack just did his job and prevented that, or is it a case that Preston should have been that far ahead? Because I'm actually curious if maybe I'm just quite content with Jack's performance, he actually did his job, or if some people are maybe just taking it that Jack is a goalkeeper and, the points, the striker should have done better for Preston.
As I always say, the goalkeeper is the last line of defence. Now, it's up to the defence to keep them away from Jack. And again, it wasn't quite working, but I've got to say, I think Ashley Williams had a good game.
Yeah,
I couldn't knock it.
I mean, again, I've been critical of some of the signings we've made since, especially around the time we got Williams. But, I can't knock him, he had a good game. I think him and Shawcross have got a steady enough partnership. I think, it's a little bit steadier than what Shawcross and Martin Zindi were looking like.
Yeah, I agree.
There is a question that if Martin Zindi became fit again, maybe Shawcross would be the one to drop out at the moment, based on form. But
he did play better this week, Shawcross.
I thought he was a bit better. Yeah. I mean, I didn't like Alex Neil's comment about Shawcross was going after Louis Malt. I thought there was one time
ridiculous.
I noticed one challenge, but I thought that was just a professional foul, as you call it. I actually thought he was being a little bit cruel on Ryan there, because he's obviously got a reputation after the Aaron Ramsey incident. And I think it's actually quite unprofessional for a manager to come out and make a comment like that, because it's just playing on reputation.
Well, Ryan went to him and helped him up.
Yeah.
There was no malice.
Yeah, I actually think, to be honest, from a professional courtesy point of view, I think Ryan was actually aware of what Louis could do and just thought, I can't beat him for pace, I'll stop him.
Yeah.
So I don't think Louis would have been offended by that professionally. So I think for Alex Neil to make a point about it after the match was just very unprofessional.
Well, what about the foul on
Joe Allen?
Joe Allen.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is proving that referees in all of English leagues just aren't at the top level of the game.
Well, that silly thing of a man didn't even admit it was a foul, and he should have been sent off.
I can understand trying to defend your player, but there's also a thing about being honest with the media and honest with your own supporters. And I think Alex Neil he did a Wenger there. He tried to say, I didn't see it.
What he said is, he isn't like that.
Yeah.
He's a nice man.
It just doesn't... it doesn't make Alex Neil look like a gentleman, shall we call it. And you don't have to be gentlemanly in this sport, but it is a case of if we were in the need of a manager at some point, Alex Neil would go down everyone's estimations just for being unprofessional in front of the camera.
Well, he looks a right bruiser.
Okay, well, let's leave that there. We won't become unprofessional ourselves. But, you know...
Say what
yeah,
I think, sorry.
I don't disagree, but it's just one of these things where I think I'd rather focus on the Paul Gallagher tackle itself, in the sense that you're looking at it and you're thinking... It's as if he actually gained a bit of confidence after that from it. It's as if he thought he could be a bit more rough and rumble himself. And it irritates me that, because at half time, the referee, according to Sky reporters anyway, in the game, the referee said he didn't see the Gallagher elbow. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, surely you should look out for a few more incidents in the game, just on the off chance that he tries to take advantage of a referee not being on top of his game.
What about the linesman?
I mean, again, some people Stoke supporters I've noticed have actually said this. If the referee didn't see it, why not the linesman or the fourth official?
Yeah.
And it does show there's a lack of communication between the refereeing teams, which, again, they need to work on.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we better wrap this one up and get on to Wigan.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, we have gone on a bit about Preston there, but I think it was just an interesting game, especially considering the first two games have been a bit drab from a Stoke perspective.
Oh, I could carry on talking about it.
Yeah, but yeah, Wigan, I've got to admit, I was looking forward to this when the fixtures came out, because being league champions and ourselves being relegated, it's one of those clashes that if it wasn't ourselves being talked about, I would have still been interested how this game went on, because, you know, when you've got a relegated team coming up against a promoted team, I'm sure both sides will be judging their own performance based on this game. You know, how are you getting on? And I do believe this is an acid test for Stoke. You know, I looked at the Preston game and said we needed a win. We obviously didn't get it, but I'm not too downhearted that we didn't get it this one time. But I think Wigan is a big barometer for us to sort of say, right, can we take that next step up now and go from battling for 1 point to actually getting all three? I mean, it's going to be very interesting on Wednesday to see what sort of performance Stoke put out.
Yes, I agree there. I've never really concentrated a lot on Wigan, if I've got to be honest. They're just so a mediocre team that I've never thought about them until we've started doing this.
I think one of the problems with Wigan, and I don't know if the actual supporters of the club would agree with this, but because it's a rugby town, the club just can't get the gates for the supporters, so it is hard to get high attendances, yet the general impression I get of the Wigan supporters themselves is that they're a very passionate group. You know, I think if there were more of them, they would actually be quite a force within football, but I think it's just that the number themselves is that low that they can't really gain a momentum as a club, which in some manner is a shame, because, you know, when we've had gates of, say, 10 to 12,000 in the Championship, I'm sure we would have liked extra supporters to come along and improve the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I can have sympathy with Wigan that, you know, I think they're always thinking if we could just get a few more in.
Yeah, but it's a rugby town and I don't think they will.
Yeah, you can understand it. If they've got to focus on rugby, they can't just suddenly switch to football.
No.
You know, I completely understand that, but I think the football supporters would have a bit of grumbling about it every now and again, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm just misreading the situation, but it's a general impression.
I mean, you've got some stats there of players.
Well, yeah, I have been looking up Wigan just in the sense that I was curious if they're stronger now from last time they were in the Championship. And I'm just looking at some of the players they've still retained from that spell. You've got Will Grigg still, Nick Powell, Michael Jacobs, Callum Connolly, although I don't know if he's had a bit of an in and out situation in that time. Sam Morsey, who seems to have come on quite a bit since last time. Sean McDonald, and even though I doubt he'll play for him anytime soon, Dan Boone. And I'll admit, Dan Boone does bring happy memories back to me. I still remember Asuma Asaidi tearing him apart when he played for Fulham. But as far as the rest go, I do think all of those players I've just mentioned have actually come on a little bit since they were last in the Championship.
Well, I've picked up on Powell. He's now scored 3 in 3. Last season, he only scored, was it 6?
The season before, yeah.
Yeah, the season before he only scored 6. Now he's halfway to that target already. So he's showing a big improvement really.
Yeah, I was looking up Nick, and there's a bit of me that actually was curious about him when we were looking in the transfer market. I thought, could he actually do a job for Stoke? And it's only because we've got Bojan and Etebo that I didn't really mention him too vocally when I was on Twitter. But, he seems an interesting young player, well, still a young player, you could argue, at 25. He scored 15 goals last season, and the season before in the Championship he was the Wigan's top scorer in the league was 6. Considering Will Grigg did well that season but only got 7, I think it's just a sign that Powell has matured a little bit. So he's definitely one I'd be looking out for in our game. Obviously you've got Grigg as well, who seems to be doing better than he did last time in the Championship, at least in terms of he seems to have got off the mark a bit quicker. So it is going to be interesting just to see how the approaches in the attack.
Now I do recognise that name, Grigg.
Yeah, it was the song for Northern Ireland and the Euros, Will Grigg's on Fire.
That's it.
Yeah, it's one of those that you see it a lot on the ticker as well. On whatever show you watch, Soccer Saturday, BBC Focus. I actually like the look of Will Grigg. He seems like how do you describe it? I wouldn't call him a poacher, but he seems like he's good around the box. He's maybe not a unit, as a strong unit, but he does seem capable of holding himself in the box and nicking a goal. So I am curious to see what he's like against us, I will admit.
What's the average age of their team?
I'd say it's around 24, 25. They've got a lot of young players. They've got a goalie on loan from Brighton, who they had last season. The fullbacks are 18 and 21, I think. So it's a pretty young side. I've just named a few there, but I would say they're all pretty young.
That Grigg is 27, isn't he?
So, yeah, even someone like him, he's not on the young side, but he's still...
He is one of the oldest, though, isn't he?
One of, yeah. So it's definitely an interesting clash in that sense, because we've got a few players like Fletcher who, if we aren't careful, they could get run over. So I would be interested to see if Rowett is going to give Fletcher the night off, as it were. Hopefully put Etebo in or Bojan, just freshen the legs up in the midfield a little, because we do need to change things over a little.
I'm not being harsh, but I do think that Fletcher isn't capable of playing 2 matches in a week. I'm not being horrible.
I know where you're coming from. I was keeping a close eye on Fletcher during the game at Preston, and I think he's still got some use. I think some Stoke supporters have been very harsh on him, but I think he's not exactly built for quick passing. So he's best if you utilise him in a position where he doesn't receive the ball a lot. And that is going to be tricky in the Championship. Perhaps when it's games where we aren't expecting to have lots of the ball, then yes, there's a use for him, because he can just sit there and break up play. Whereas I think when we're meant to be on the ball a lot more, he's got to come out the team and let someone who's maybe a quicker thinker on the ball take over.
Yeah.
So it's quite tricky to say, but I'm wondering if maybe a midfield duo of Allen and Bojan could work, because
I think so. Sorry.
We're waiting to see who Allen responds to in this team, who will make him click as the midfielder who we know he can be. I'm just going to keep going back to Wales for the Euros. He was there, forget Gareth Bale, in my eyes, Allen was the man of the tournament for Wales.
Yeah.
And we know he can play at that level, but I think we're all just waiting to see that for Stoke.
Yeah, he just needs somebody to play off, and I think Bojan would be the ideal suitor for that.
Yeah, I think the only trouble is we're already getting overrun the midfield, so having a very attacking midfielder in Bojan with Allen, would it actually do what we need it to do? It's such a tricky thing, because I do believe the 4-4-2 worked at Preston, or at least what should have been a 4-4-2. But I think we need just a little bit more going forward so that Alan can actually be the defensive midfielder, or the Andre Pirlo of the team who sits back and dictates play.
Yeah. I mean, I know we said we finished with Preston, but again, the manager said Crouch didn't make a difference. He scored. Of course he made a difference, or else it would have been 2-1.
Well, it's not just that, though. He also did give us a focal point. And again, I feel like I'm being harsh on Berahino, because I do believe he did well given the role he was given to play. But on the other hand, he didn't break his goal duck again. So, again, I feel like it would be incredibly harsh for him to be dropped against Wigan.
Oh, I definitely think he should play.
But the trouble is, Crouch actually did more on the pitch, so... I mean, you can't really drop a phobia either, because even though he didn't score against Preston, he has got 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So, Rowett has now got choices up front. You know, I think anyone who calls for Berahino to be dropped after that performance is... Your only argument with me is Crouch. You know, and if that's the case, I'll sort of say, okay, I get you. But I'm actually at a loss otherwise why you're dropping, because Bojan, yes, I know that he had a good game against Brentford, but we still didn't play well.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing is that Crouch and Fletcher, they're getting on a bit now, and I think they should only be doing half a match.
Yeah, or definitely 1 game a week at most. You know, you don't be playing them twice a week in the Championship.
No, and even though I love Crouch, I honestly don't think he could withstand going the full 90 minutes. He'll probably prove me wrong, but that's just my feelings.
Okay, so we're on the last question before we do the wrap-up, but I want your thoughts on Monjuic when he came on.
Oh, please don't. I mean, you know my feelings against Juve. He should have been sold at the window. And I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but it's my opinion, and I just don't see him as a player.
Now, you see, the thing is, I actually thought he did a job for us when he came on. He supported Tom Edwards a bit, and I'm actually wondering if it'd be worth starting him on the right and putting Tom Ince on the left. You know, because I think Ince looked better on the left-hand side, but we have got to wrap it up now. But I'm curious if anyone else agrees with what I've said, or if they like me mum and think, no, leave Juve out the side.
I won't be offended by any comments you want to make. In fact, we really, really want comments.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bad asking for comments, but it's just we'd like feedback on how this vlog series is going so far. Well, that is a wrap now, so if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, bye for now.
Cheerio, folks.